Hello, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Seth Joyner Show. Got a special guest for you guys today. We're going to chop it up. We're going to talk not cowboys. We're going to talk some quarterbacks primarily today for half the show, because this guy is an ex-Super Bowl champion at the quarterback position, Super Bowl MVP. I had many battles against this guy. But we're also going to talk about some of the other quarterbacks and what's going on. And then we're going to break down the NFC East team by team, look at some of the draft picks, some of the new coaches, some of the guys, that really need to step up this year and cement themselves before teams have to maybe go back in the draft and look at redoing this thing. We'll talk some Eagles, of course. We have to do that. But primarily, we're going to be talking about quarterbacks today. Buckle in, because this guy, we have many battles against each other. He used to play for the Washington football team, won a Super Bowl with the Washington football team. He was the MVP of the Super Bowl. Phenomenal golfer, good friend. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you one Mark Rypien. Mark, how you doing, my friend?
Seth, how are you?
Rip, I'm doing good, man. Life is good. I've been traveling all over the place, playing some golf, and now I get an opportunity to spend the next, 59 minutes with you talking some football, and life is good, man. How about yourself?
Wonderful. As much like yourself, golf is kind of our passing of the torch, from playing the great game that you and I spent many afternoons on Sunday battling each other. And gosh, it's just great to go out and play golf and kind of have that competitive juices still flow. And I know every chance I get to see you, I know how infatuated and how much you love the game of golf, and how many of the same types of, analogies we put in our golf game as we do in our sport of football. So,
hey, listen, no doubt about it. People always ask, what is the fascination with, I would say ex-football players, because, those are the guys we hang around primarily. Although, I was with a lot of baseball players, a couple of basketball players the last week or so. When we retire, the competitive juices never go away. What golf, presents to us is that opportunity to remain competitive, and like I know, it's not so much the guys that you play against in golf, even though it is, because, you don't want them getting in your wallet. It really is a game that, comes down to, the competition of yourself. The golf ball is sitting on the ground. It's not like you're trying to hit a 100-mile-an-hour fastball. It's not like you're trying to cover a wide receiver. That ball is sitting on the ground, and all you got to do is figure out how to put that club face on it.
Yeah, and that's the hardest part about the whole doggone thing, is. And the great thing is the challenges it does, because you can play the same golf course every day for the next 20 years of your life and have different variables each and every day. And that's why it's so fascinating and so exciting to just be out with your friends or your family members or whoever you enjoy playing this great game, and just having the opportunity to say, even at our age, we're in our late 50s now, and having a chance to watch Phil this week. And I've always been a big fan of Tigers throughout his career, and we hope that he gets back into playing at some point in time. But it's just amazing to see the older generation like that kind of gives us, a little bit of that fountain of youth again, that we figure we can maybe compete against the younger guys and maybe hit a little farther but it's not all about the length anymore. It's just about putting it on the green and using that flat stick and just kind of enjoying the fruits of the labor of the football we played and the things that we went through. That was difficult times and tough times, and we played a course in an era that we didn't have free agency, and you kind of did things on and off the field probably the same with your teammates as we did with ours. You got to know your guys, and I've got to know your guys a lot over the years, just playing against them in some uncomfortable situations, but including yourself. But golf is just that kind of that last flicker of light in our lives that kind of keeps us going day to day.
No doubt about it. You got to meet up close and personal a lot of my guys, but trust me, I got to meet those hogs all the time on that counter tray, man. My goodness, I knew it was coming. and there was nothing I can do but take it on every single play.
Well, and that's, again, that's the part of this game that I just admire the most for, your side of the football is the seeing guys 285, 295 pounds coming around the corner, the athleticism they have, and you meeting them, in the hole and doing the things that you did. I just have so much admiration for what you did as a player, Seth, and what you did for your community, and the great teams that you guys were a part of.
Well, before we jump into the football, I mean, you mentioned Phil Mickelson, and my goodness, at 50 years old, he gives guys like me and you a lot of hope that we can still go out there, on the links and still get it done. I mean, how phenomenal is that to be the oldest guy to ever win a major championship?
Well, no one thought it would happen. I think everyone sees the technology of the game and the players today that are hitting the ball so far and accurate, and to see Phil kind of revamp his whole body style, and because of some of the issues he's going through, much like issues as we get older, arthritis and the pains and frustrations we have as playing our sport. Phil has the same torque in his body and things that he's had to go through, and his rheumatoid arthritis and changing his diet and being the most complete pro he can possibly be. We're in that same category, I mean, as we get older, we have to treat our bodies a certain way. And I know that one of the things that COVID has kind of done is, add a little bit of weight to an already body that doesn't need any more pounds per pressure on these knees of mine that I went through the rigors back in the day playing against you. So it's great to see Phil looking well, playing well, and giving these guys a run for their money each and every Sunday.
Well, talking about COVID, I mean, it's a good segue, into, some football stuff. I mean, with everything that's gone on the last year and a half, when you look at the NFL, and this offseason seems to be an offseason when you look at the draft, an historic one from the standpoint that you've got 9 quarterbacks drafted, maybe even 10, I believe it is, drafted in the first 4 rounds, 8 in the first 3. The moniker that, the NFL is a quarterback driven league. When you look at the first 3 picks, and I know that, these guys, as a quarterback, you've seen them all play. You probably have done your own analysis of each one of them. What I like to do is go through each one of them and get your opinion on them. Sure. But, 3 quarterbacks taken in the first 3 picks, boom, 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 out the gate. First of all, we got the Jaguars taking Trevor Lawrence at number 1 overall. I believe that the only way that Urban Meyer takes that job is that, he gets the assurance from the organization that he's going to be able to get this guy. One of the most prolific quarterbacks in the history of college football. The Jaguars look like they finally have a quarterback that they can build around, and they can get this organization turned around. Give me your thoughts on Trevor Lawrence.
Well, I think that every team now is looking for a guy that is going to become their so-called franchise player. Whether it be the Tom Brady's, the Russell Wilsons, the Lamar Jacksons, and guys of that nature. I think that everyone wants one of these guys on their roster yesterday, and so they're looking forward to a draft, and they're seeing something in the draft that really makes them feel that they can be an elite franchise, much like the Patriots and the teams that have just let's Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. Just the guys, those types of guys can take you and elevate you to that next level. And I think if they feel that they have the other pieces in place, and I've been such an advocate from day one, you got to build through your offensive line. And that's one of the ways I became fairly successful in a system that we were very good up front. If you control the offensive and defensive lines on both sides of the football, as well as I do, you're going to be successful. And they're putting a lot of money into a lot of these franchise guys, but I think there's a structure needs to be built around them, and I think that starts with the guys up front. And I think they feel they have that in place in Jacksonville. And I think that they need a gunslinger like Trevor Lawrence and someone that really showed it at a very high level from when he first came in to Dabo Swinney's system and played exceptionally well for a long period of time, that he can do the same in his backyard right there, not far from Clemson, that he can do that in the NFL.
Well, Mark, I just want to tap your thoughts because, we grew up in an era of football where, the running game was an integral part of what you do. In today's NFL, it looks like, it's an afterthought for most of these teams. I always felt like, especially when you're dealing with young quarterbacks, that it was always in your best interest to have a decent running game. It goes back to your point that, you build from the offensive line and the defensive line outwards, back, and sideways. We saw it with Joe Burrow last year, the number 1 overall pick. He gets injured. Now his, in my opinion, his development has been arrested just because of the injury.
Yeah.
And then the Cincinnati Bengals come back this year and they take a wide receiver instead of the best offensive lineman in the draft is sitting right there, waiting for you to take him because you've got to protect, this quarterback. Do you think that the game is going in a negative direction in terms of, the pass first, or, because the thought is you pass early, you get a lead, and then you get into your 4-minute offense and you run the clock out towards the end of the game. I think if you got a guy like Tom Brady, and even last year he struggled to do so. If you got a guy like Patrick Mahomes, a guy like Aaron Rodgers, guys like that, you can get away with that type of mentality. But to me, I still think the young quarterbacks still need the running game. Because, listen, when I think back about you guys, you guys had probably 5 plays total. When you really broke it all down, you had 5 plays total. You're going to run the counter tray. Okay, you're going to run your counter O back the other way. And then you have play action off of those, and you have multiple formations that look different, but they really weren't that different, but you had to play action off of it. And it allowed you to run anything you wanted in your playbook because you could run the ball and defenses had to honor the fact that you might run the ball. Do you think it's a mistake for these young guys in today's NFL to expect for them to come in and throw the ball 40, 50 times a game?
I just think it's where the game's, kind of developed to. And the system of protecting a quarterback is enabled this type of offense, 5 wide receivers, no running backs. I think that Seth, back when you guys had to game plan for us with Buddy Ryan, there was I think a 40-second clock or 35-second clock. So we could shift, we could motion, we could do a lot of things prior to snapping the football. Now they're just coming out with 5 wide receivers saying, hey, we're going to spread things out. We're going to get the ball out of our hands quick, and we're going to have our athletes make plays, and it does take away from the big play opportunities where you can be running the football and get 7, 8, 9 guys in the box and then have an opportunity to chance with play action to go up and over the top. You can still see some of that in if a team is successful. And you look at Tampa Bay, I think they were good enough in the running game and good enough at play action where Tom Brady had a lot of opportunities because they were relatively successful. I'm not saying you're going to run for 150 yards a game, but if they run for 90 to 120 yards a game, that really gives them the credence and the opportunity to make some plays downfield with the wide receivers, Evans and the big guys that they had, Gronk in the Super Bowl to do that because, you're going to be creeping up in the line of scrimmage and you're going to be wanting to get in there and get your nose in there and make some tackles. And when you do that, it gives you one-on-one on the outside and gives you an opportunity. And the other thing is that you guys were the best, as most teams were, when you're in a soft cover too, because you basically are saying you can't run the ball against us. And if you're not going to run the ball against us, you're probably not going to throw it very well either. So it's a great chess match, that we always each and every week, when you put your game plans in as the teams do now. It's changed over the period because of the rule changes. You're not able to hit the quarterback. You're not able to take a shot at a wide receiver coming over the middle, and for right reasons. We want to make sure we're protecting the players. And I wish we would have done this back in our day. I probably still maybe had a year or two left in me if these rule changes are still intact. But I just think teams are taking advantage of these rule changes and opportunities to, you can't hit the quarterback, you can't do some of these things. So let's go with five wide receivers and spread it out and see what we can do. It's almost like that short, slants and things that they're doing is their running game in essence.
Well, my biggest question is, okay, how does that affect the development of certain quarterbacks? Because when I look at a guy like Cam Newton, when I look at a guy like Lamar Jackson, when I look at the demise of one Colin Kaepernick, even as I look at a guy like the kid here in Arizona, Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
Okay. So you formulate. It used to be you draft a quarterback. He sat for a year or two. You developed him. He got an opportunity to watch. Yeah, he got an opportunity to watch what was going on. He got an opportunity to look at the game from a different perspective. You develop all of his skill sets along the way, so that when he stepped on the field, he was ready to play, and he could throw the football. What I see in these guys is these guys were drafted, and the offense was developed around their skill sets to run the football. I still think, that these guys still need to be developed. Cam Newton, to me, had great potential, to be one of the all-time greats. But what I never saw in Cam Newton, and I'm afraid that's what's going to happen with Lamar Jackson, is that, and you saw it with RG3 right there in Washington, that these guys, they never really learn how to play the quarterback position fully. And they're tagged with this running quarterback thing because it's their instinct to take off and run rather than go through the progression, rather than make sure all of their skill sets and all of their mechanics are right. When I look at a guy like Lamar Jackson, electric, great athlete.
Oh, yeah.
But
Absolutely.
The question will always be, can he win a championship completing right around 50% of his passes, because his mechanics are so poor. So when I think about the development of some of these players, these systems just allow them to, throw the ball to the guy if he's open. If he's not, take off and make a play. We had a quarterback in Philadelphia like that in Randall Cunningham, and he never realized his full potential until he went to Minnesota. I mean, if you want to see what he could have been, go look at the year he had in Minnesota.
Oh my goodness, absolutely, I agree 100%. Yep, and I think one of the things too is that looking at then there's Patrick Mahomes, and then there's the Russell Wilson. I mean, there's so much put on these individuals to take you to a victory, and let's get us to the fourth quarter where we're going to put it on. Either you're going to throw it or you're going to do something spectacular. Making a play out of nothing. And these guys are incredible at doing so. And I think they're getting better. I do know this, that these probably in the last 20 years, and you've seen it, in sports, that people are individualizing themselves in athletics. We played everything, I mean, I even tried running track once, and, I just knew that wasn't going to be my forte, but I played baseball, played basketball, and football was my least favorite of the sports, but I played it because my friends and my buddies were doing it. These guys now are specialized at age 8 years old, and they're being groomed to be the next Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady. I mean, they're mechanics, and you're hoping that they're taught the proper mechanics at a young age. One thing I did to my nephew is be starting his third year of the Broncos is I didn't want to get in the way of anything other than I wanted him proper mechanics, throwing the football, making sure, like in golf, turning your chest, facing the target, doing the little things, footwork. You don't have to be the fleetest of foot, but you got to be able to get that ball out in time, and your footwork is such a key component of that. And I think they're developing these guys, Lamar Jackson is just such an unbelievable freak of nature when it comes to, doing what he does, and the amazing things that they're doing with him and around him. I do, like yourself, say that think that he could be a guy, if they develop a passing game that franchise could be, with their defense and what they're doing, be unstoppable. And I think, there is going to be an opportunity here during the offseason where they're finally going to be able to get together. It's been a year and a half, 2 years, these guys have had really any training camp or anything like that. But developing your player and quarterback, and I just give a lot of credit to Jerry Rome, because my first 2 years in the league with Jay Schrader, and then of course Doug Williams being one of my mentors and such, that I had an opportunity to work with Jerry Rome, and I had an opportunity to work with Doug and in the classroom and watching film and understanding what his perspective on things were, along with Joe Gibbs' philosophy and how we kind of came about doing what we did. But I had 2 years to do that, and I didn't have to be the guy. They want you to win yesterday, in this league, and they're all throwing these guys into the fire right now. And luckily for some of these franchises, they have super freak athletes that can make plays and out of nothing when plays break down. But for the ones that are doing it, the Patrick Mahomes that are doing it in the pocket, trying to keep play action and do some of the things that they're doing. Tom Brady's very good at just moving the pocket gradually. I mean, he's not going to be a guy that's going to scramble to get you, a foot. But he is a guy that's going to move in the pocket, and they're going to make the pocket different. They can't keep the one guy in one place for a whole game and expect you to win. I mean, there's too many good athletes that are going to come down and break down that pocket. But play action, sprint outs, and just half rolls and things like that move the pocket really will enhance all of these guys. And I think offensive coordinators are looking at that now and seeing that, we can do this in a structured way that give them 1, 2, 3, and reads and things that makes it pretty simplistic to do, along with the great athletic things that they have and the ability to do that along and throwing the football. I mean, what a two-headed monster that thing's going to be when they start doing that. It's going to be pretty impressive to watch. And I'm just infatuated by these athletes that are playing at the quarterback position. Smart, big, strong, and the ability to ad lib and make plays when things break down is incredible. But I think that happens because you invest a lot of money in that one position that you're getting weak in other positions. I think that would enhance them. And one of the things Tom Brady's managed to do over these years is take extension of his contract to make sure it doesn't have a big hit on the salary, so that they can put money into their offensive line and do the things that I think are necessary to protect him, as they should all these other guys.
Good point. You're watching the Seth Joyner Show. My special guest today is Mark Rypien, Super Bowl champion, Super Bowl MVP. And Mark, as we move on to these next three guys, I guess you could have thrown them in a hat, back in January and figured out, and tried to figure out who was the top guy. And they're all guys that can obviously throw the ball very well, but these guys fall into that category of great athletes playing quarterback. So the Jets settle on Zach Wilson from BYU. I watched him all season long, and I mean, he just made one play after another. There was a lot of, conversation about the talent level that he played against. But when you watch the guy play, he's the ultimate competitor. Your thoughts on Zach Wilson?
I think, we got to see, because they played, BYU did, and had an opportunity to play, which a lot of teams didn't. A lot of conferences chose not to play during as many games during the COVID this year. But so he got a chance to be on prime time quite a few times when he was at BYU. The Mountain West Conference has a storied history of quarterbacks that have had great careers, and I think he was one of the ones that was listed and is a very savvy, athletic guy that showed in this last season. Coming into this season, he was highly touted, but it was like, okay, let's see what he does, in situations against some big time football, and the guy showed that he can play and has I think the tools and the mindset to make the big throw. You saw that at the combine, some of the things that these guys were doing at the combine were pretty impressive. And I think that when you look from a standpoint of the upside to guys like Zach and Trevor and the others that were drafted in the first round, I think there's the quarterback position is going to be well represented in the next 8 to 10 years by some pretty good players that I think are going to have an impact on their franchises and have an opportunity to do some good things.
Yeah. So this next guy, to your point, North Dakota State didn't have a season last year. The 49ers trade up to select Trey Lance. And, while the guy's got a big arm, any thoughts about or reservations about him not playing football for a whole calendar year at the collegiate level and then being picked third overall, even though he's going to be in a situation where he's going to have time to sit and develop kind of old school behind Jimmy Garoppolo?
Yep. I just think his upside, and what they saw and what you see as a physical specimen and a kid that can flat out throw the football and be a big body that can move, I think is appealing to Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco and John Lynch. Definitely, I think, sometimes you find those diamonds in the rough and because of they're not being in the spotlight or maybe playing at a high level as some would think, that doesn't mean that they saw something that others didn't. And obviously they saw something that even surprised me and shocked me when they took him as the third pick, but they definitely have worked him out. They definitely have seen his football IQ, talked to him in many meetings. This wasn't something that they just said, I think we have a hunch. It's like they put a lot of thought into it. And I think, game film, I think a lot of people need to look at game film because a lot of times under pressure, especially at the skill positions, you got to see how guys react. But in certain situations where you can't play and you're not able to play because of injury or COVID, you just got to be able to get a guy in there, see what he's like in your own environment where you can have him throw the routes and the things that you're going to be doing for your football team and see how he does under that type of scrutiny, and then sit him down in a classroom and talk football 101 with him and see where his football IQ is. And I'm sure all those things were added up to say, this is going to be well worth taking a gamble on and maybe not even be a gamble, maybe be something where, he's going to get a chance to learn the system under Jimmy and Kyle. And Kyle has been one of the foremost coaches and in finding guys that he likes to groom. And I think this is going to be one that he's going to take under his wing. And I think you're going to see some great things.
This next guy was somewhat of a head scratcher because I watched him play and, he's been a good player for the last 2 years. I'm talking about Justin Fields. It was a little bit of a head scratcher in the process, in the draft process, how this guy moved from one of the top 2 quarterbacks to actually being the fourth one taken overall and falling all the way to number 11. The Bears have to maneuver to actually, go and get him. And the past 2 years, I've really only seen this kid play one bad game. That game against Northwestern, he was terrible. But the rest of the time, listen, he makes good decisions. He's tough as nails. We've seen that against Clemson, in the college football championship this year. I like his upside. I think that, you haven't really seen a lot of quarterbacks come out of Ohio State traditionally and come into the NFL and be successful. You haven't seen many guys come out of Urban Meyer's, tree, so to speak, from the quarterback position and have success.
Mm-hmm.
But this guy, is the ultimate competitor. I liked him. I thought that he would probably go, number 2 to the Jets. But he winds up going to the Bears, an interesting place for him to land. Your thoughts?
I would have to say, I'm as shocked as you. I watch this kid, not only watch his kid, what he does off the field, his never mind football IQ, his IQ, and just a kind of a kid that I mean, I would be proud to be his dad. That you're looking at somebody that I think is has the right mindset for this. He has made all the throws. We saw some throws again too in the combine that he made, and you kind of shake your head at, and you go, how do you go to your left and throw back to your right and do some of the I mean, it's mind-boggling the athleticism you see, and he's not a small kid. He's a pretty good sized kid. I think he's 6'2", 215, 220, and I didn't see him make many plays that I would even consider as in his 2 years. I just watched so many highlights that were incredible, and then to hear him just be the humbleness to him, the humility and grace that he plays the game with, and the understanding he has of the game. I think that the Bears honestly got a steal in this kid, and he's going to be something special. He's going to be like Murray down in Arizona, where if you start building some pieces around him, and getting him some of those 6'4" wide receivers, along with protecting him. Again, let's go back to the guys up front. I think that's kind of the no matter what you want to say about a running game or not a running game, you still got to be able to protect your guy and be able to run the football and do some of those things. So if they can build some guys, around him at the skill level and the offensive line, I think this kid has got a bright future. I really, really like him as a football player. I like him as a kid, and I like him to do great things, I think, in the future.
Now, this next guy coming off a national championship this year, the Pats were in a situation where they really needed a quarterback of their future, and they move up and they take Mac Jones at 15. A lot of people look at him as a pure pocket passer in Steve Sarkisian's offense and under Nick Saban. I think he's a perfect fit for what Josh McDaniels and Bill Belichick like to do. They get 1 year to let him kind of sit on the bench and grow old school style with Cam Newton still there, unless Cam just falls flat on his face again. But I like what I saw out of him, and a lot of people think that he can't move, but when you watch him, he is an athletic quarterback. He just doesn't move around like the previous three guys we just talked about.
Yeah, I think he's a big kid that obviously made so many plays at Alabama, had a great receiving core, and I think you need a combination of all those things: great running game, great receiving core, great offensive line, and they can find all the kids they want at Alabama. My daughter went to school there, and shout out to Coach Saban taking good care of her when she went down there, and shout out to my daughter Amber, if anyone's watching. Just had our third grandchild. Her first was born in Walter Reed Hospital 4 days ago. To her and her husband John, congratulations on Merrick Elaine Devotee, born. Just a beautiful story. Go into more of that later, but anyways, so it's pretty cool to know that Alabama's not known. They're known for Kenny Stabler. They're known for Joe Namath. They're known for Richard Todd, but they're not known for a stable of guys. AJ McCarron, I think, is still playing in the league, and the quarterback position at Alabama. Everyone says, well, all you have to do is just kind of drive the Mercedes, and which is true. They got so many athletes to choose from, but this kid played at a level, I think. Even Coach Saban, to anyone in the college football ranks, will tell you that the game has changed so much, even in college, that it's not about him holding teams to 17. It's about him trying to hold teams to 24, 25 in the SEC and scoring 30 to 35. So we need to have more output at the quarterback position. We need to be more aggressive. And I think that's kind of the mindset now, and is to find that guy at quarterback, and whether it be Tua or Jonesy, and I mean, they just it's a prerequisite now that hasn't been in the past. You find that big running back and defense that just can hold them, but the SEC's changed, and that's a wide open offense now, and you got to be able to score some points in order to win.
Yeah. Well, this next guy, I watched him play at Texas A&M for quite some time now, and he's a little bit unpolished, but he's one of those quarterbacks that when he gets in a groove, my goodness, he can throw the ball. And his pro day was ridiculous. I mean, some of the throws he made, he was throwing the ball 70, 80 yards in the air. One Kellen Mond, drafted in the third round by the Minnesota Vikings. He's another guy who can kind of sit pat for a little while. You got Kirk Cousins still there. But he's got tremendous upside, but he seems to me that he's going to be a little more of a project than the other guys.
Yeah, but it seems like we've been watching him for like the last 4 or 5 years, down at A&M, and you get the good with the bad, and again, that's college football. These are 20-year-old kids, trying to run a $1 billion industry and make proud to their alumni, and he's done it for a long period of time. And proud of Kellen. I just watch him play is fun. He's a big, strong, just can throw the ball and actually moves pretty good and makes plays. And I think he is in a great scenario in Minnesota. I mean, Kirk Cousins probably got 2 or 3 more really good years, a couple of years more real good years, and it sounds like they've upped their skill positions. I'm just hoping they didn't do it at a price where they got rid of some of their offensive linemen, because they're going to find it doesn't matter. Kirk Cousins or Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes. If a guy's breathing down your neck every play, you're only going to be so successful. So I think they're heading in the right direction. I think Kellen Mond's going to play a big part of their future in the next 5 to 10 years.
Now, this last guy taken by the Texans with the 67th overall pick, there's a lot of people out there that really love this kid. I think that, the fact that he played in the Pac-12, Stanford, was down the last couple of years. There are a lot of people that really love Sam Mills out of Stanford. Your thoughts on Sam?
One is probably, if he went to Stanford, he's probably got a pretty good football IQ. An IQ period he's probably really, really strong at. Secondly, I think, playing in the Pac-12, which I think has gotten a lot stronger, and it showed in the, not just in football, but basketball, and how they represented this year, and how the conference has been on a kind of a downslide over the last 10 years. But guys like Justin Hebert and Mills, and, having an opportunity, Sam Darnold, these guys are I think play in a conference. At least they've been tested, and I think they have this kid has an opportunity to go and get behind Deshaun and get an opportunity to see. I think arguably maybe they had the best year out of anyone last year, Deshaun Watson, for as horrific as they played, and the expectations in Houston of their defense and for what he did offensively was pretty impressive. So he's going to get a great opportunity to be with a guy that is very understands the offense there, and together I think they can do some search and conquer and do some great things down in Houston.
Well, that wraps up, the historic 8, I should say. Never, in the history of the NFL draft, you had 8 quarterbacks drafted in the first 3 rounds. That was just phenomenal. I want to segue and kind of talk about, some of the quarterbacks, some of the veteran quarterbacks, and some of the things that have gone on, this offseason. A couple of trades, the situation with Deshaun, but a guy that I've been watching, for the first 5 years of his career, the Eagles trade Carson Wentz to the Indianapolis Colts. The situation was tenable. I mean, you go 4-11-1 last year. The coaching staff gets fired. There's talk with the new head coach, Nick Sirianni, that, hey, we're going to have a quarterback competition. Carson Wentz out, from a quarterback's perspective, Mark, with all the things that transpired around him, what do you think about, his desire to be out of Philadelphia? Does competition, does some of the things that transpired in Philadelphia, does that really mess with the psyche of a quarterback? I think the Philadelphia fans really want to know, and who better to ask? Because I mean, listen, you were there under similar circumstances with a bunch of good quarterbacks all around you, and the competition was tenable. So talk to me about Carson and the situation that he just endured last year, and the trade, and the possibility of what next year looks like for him.
Well, I think sometimes there's a point in time where the changing of the guard is needed. Free agency is obviously we weren't acclimated to that back when we played, Seth, because we didn't have the free agency. I think what one of the things that maybe looking at it from Carson's standpoint and maybe the Eagles' standpoint as far as parting ways is Carson wanted to be, I think, protected, and we talk from day one about the guys up front. You're only good as the guys up front. And they struggled, the Eagles did, in protecting him and even protecting Jalen. And I'm just hoping for Jalen's safety and for him to take the bull by the horn and move the Eagles back to the pride of 2, 3, 4 years ago and the pride of when you played there, Seth, that there's a great opportunity, I think, for both franchises. The Colts just went through and had a great season with Phillip Rivers, who's maybe go on eternity. That guy's like Father Time, just kept going and going and going. But they're also in a position where they need to change, and I think they saw something and see something in Carson Wentz that a lot of us saw. And I think in his early stages before he got injured and Nick Foles took over and of course took him to the Super Bowl, the kid's got some moxie. He can play, but in Philadelphia, we know is a tough place. I mean, goodness gracious, Santa Claus gets a heck beat out of him at the stadium around Christmas time, and never mind. I mean, there's the only stadium in the NFL that our own organization said, hey, you don't have to go to Philly to watch your husband and family play. I wouldn't go if I were you. That was a great environment to go into as a player, because I mean they are some of the best fans, but with that they are very critical fans too.
Right.
And so they're looking at the coach, they're looking at the owner, they're looking at Carson Wentz, and everyone's problem. Maybe it's a good thing just to kind of part ways. Let's move on. I think the fans embraced Jalen Hurts. I think he's there's so many good things to like about that kid. I mean, for what he did, just to say, hey, Tua, it's yours, as far as leading Alabama and then coming back the next year and almost taking Oklahoma to the national championship game. The kid has some really, really, I mean, you can't help but not root for someone like Jalen Hurts. Everyone, I think, rooted for him. And even though he probably knew that Tua was maybe the guy that was going to be the next coming of taking Alabama to a national championship, he did it graciously and with a total amount of humility and just handled it so well. And I think that's the kind of demeanor you need in Philly, as I mean, when things are great in Philly, it's awesome. It is a great place to be. And I played 1 year there with Ray Rhodes as the head coach, and John Gruden was the offensive coordinator. And gosh, it was a fun town. A lot of good golf in Philly too, by the way.
Oh yeah,
my Lord. Yeah. Oh, and so anyway, so go back to golf all the time. But I think it's just probably in looking at this, Seth, I think it's good for both parties, and it gives Carson a chance. It gives Jalen an opportunity now this is my team, and it gives this new coaching staff to kind of bust away from a lot of the I don't know, just some of the negative stuff that was going on, and
right.
A very proud football team that had a lot going for it. So,
well, before we move on, I will say this: I think that sometimes the things we go through, and in the moment we can't really see how beneficial they are. I think the best thing that happened to Jalen Hurts is Tua Tagovailoa. I mean, because if he doesn't come along and do what he does, then Jalen Hurts probably doesn't go to Oklahoma. He doesn't link up with Lincoln Riley, and he doesn't, fix the passing portion of his game. And
Yep.
if he doesn't do that, then he's not in the situation that he finds himself in at the present moment. So sometimes, in life, things happen, and in the moment we can't understand why. But man, the man upstairs is setting you up for something better down the road. You just got
Absolutely.
to endure the pain and move on. Talking about pain, this next guy, Sam Darnold, gets traded to the Panthers, gets a fresh start with Matt Rule. The dysfunction of the New York Jets organization, I felt bad for this kid because they drafted him high and they did absolutely nothing to ensure that he could get better with the coach and the coaching staff, that he had to play under. And then they move on from him, after 3-4 years. What's the prospects for Sam Darnold to reach his potential under Matt Rule in Carolina?
Well, that's going to you have to look at the history of the Jets, and you kind of wonder what are they what's their mindset? What are they looking for here? And I say that because Todd Bowles was there, and Todd is probably one of the best football guys, knowledge wise and everything, and he can coach. He's coached at every level. He's coached with Bruce at Arizona and almost won a Super Bowl, and won a Super Bowl in Tampa with Bruce, and then coached at the Jets and had some success early on there. And I don't see the Jets building anything that really is going to put them at that pinnacle of being, I'm the best in New York. If you're the best in New York, okay, the Giants have been struggling, and both those franchises were proud franchises, have been proud franchises for a number of years. And I know the Jets fans are probably the most rabid outside of the Eagles fans in the NFL. And so I just didn't think that was a great fit for Sam, and maybe some fresh air in Carolina, and an opportunity and a chance. But I'm also I'm not sold on Sam Darnold. So I'm not going to sit here and toot every quarterback's horn and tell them how great they are, because I think to play and just do what he does in the NFL, we know he's a great player. I just don't know if he's that guy that can take the team to that next level. And I'm hoping he shows shows me wrong.
I hope that the new change of scenery works out for him, because under Adam Gase, for his time there, my goodness, I just felt for the kid, because you could just see
I did too, yeah.
that he just was not getting what he needed. And I tell you, with Robert Saleh, I think that the Jets, for the first time, Jets fans have something to be optimistic about. It might not look like it this year, but I think that guy knows football. I think he's a tremendous leader of men. And I think the Jets finally have their head coach in Robert Saleh. I'd be really interested to see and watching with bated breath to see how he transforms this team over the next couple of years. One of the biggest things in the media right now is Aaron Rodgers, I should say, excuse me, and what's going on with him and the Green Bay Packers. And help me understand, how does this happen? The guy is one of the top quarterbacks in the league, top 3 quarterbacks in the league, coming off of a MVP year in the playoffs, 1 game away from the Super Bowl, and now he doesn't want to play for the organization anymore. What in the world is going on with Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers, man?
Well, obviously, Aaron's, a very bright kid, not because he went to Cal Berkeley, just because he went to the Pac-12 school makes him a bright kid. So there's a lot of pieces probably we don't know about, and things that maybe he saw that he would like to have changed within the offensive, defense, whatever structure, I don't know. But Aaron deems the most respect, I think, of anyone in that organization. So for him to be a little bit disgruntled, there's probably something there that's more to it than we know. And I think if they can figure a way to work that out in Green Bay, I think, Aaron's just going to keep doing what he does, and that's winning football games and getting them into the playoffs, and hopefully to hoist another, where the Super Bowl was invented, Vince Lombardi, and hoist another Lombardi trophy. So I don't have the answers. I kind of asked a few people that that are a little higher up, and they didn't have answers either. So I know that there's been talk about him coming to Denver in exchange for some draft picks, and I know that maybe John, Elway, having a guy that has won Super Bowls and has played golf with Aaron, knows Aaron real well, would love to have maybe him come to Denver. I don't know the exact situation there or what's going on in Green Bay. Washington football team has showed some interest in what that might be, but they just got in the free agency Ryan Fitzpatrick. So I think it's maybe just a way to say, hey, I'm a little bit disgruntled. If you can figure a few of these things out, help me out in a few ways here and there, and make some decisions that are going to make our football team better, I think I'll be okay in Green Bay. No matter what, I think Aaron's just going to be well received if he comes back, no matter what he said, because I think people respect him so much as a leader, and he's done so many great things. Or we're going to see him in a different team and playing probably at the same high level he's always played at. I don't know. You probably know more than I do. Tell me.
Mark, listen, I'll tell you this. I know from experience that the grass isn't always as green on the other side of the fence.
You're right.
I mean, right. He's got running backs, he's got wide receivers, and he's got tight ends, and he's got a decent offensive line when they're healthy. You get traded somewhere else and you don't have all of those things, and you're happy to be out of that situation because culturally or whatever it is, whatever the problems are, you want out. But sometimes, you can jump out of the frying pan right dead into the fire, So, I mean, Aaron's got to be, careful here. And I always feel like, in situations like this, that every situation is repairable. As grown men, you just got to sit down and talk through it. Listen, the Green Bay Packers stand a better chance at winning the Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers stands a better chance of winning another Super Bowl with the Green Bay Packers, in my opinion. So now, how do you have a meeting of the minds and sit down and figure it out and say, okay, we can budge here if you can budge here, and we can move forward, and stay on our goals. But to just ask out and to create, sometimes you got to be careful what you say too, because some things you just can't take back.
No, not today.
Definitely not today. So the last guy, Deshaun Watson, you talked about him earlier. What a heck of a season he had last year. And all of a sudden he's disgruntled. He wants out. They've traded away, all of his talent, and up jumps the situation that he finds himself in. Still tremendous talent. I don't want to pass judgment one way or the other because I don't know all the particulars. Right. I read today that he hasn't showed up to any of the practices. His stances, I still want to be traded. When you have a situation like this, the Texans are almost in a situation where they have to trade him. But then again, with his current situation, any team that trades for him, you're in a situation where even if he settles all of these circumstances that he finds himself in, he's going to wind up on the commissioner's list. He's going to wind up being suspended for 6 to 8 games. Is it worth the risk of trading for a guy that can transform your offense in that way, knowing that you potentially won't have him available for 6 to 8 games?
Yeah, there's so many underlying conditions here that we don't know, about Deshaun. I mean, there's a lot of hearsay, and it doesn't sound good in some areas, and then others, it's just who knows. With today and social media and everything that is happening, you got to be able to look at both sides of the ledger here, and his accusers as well as himself, and can he look himself in the mirror and say, hey, I'm an honest guy, and I made some mistakes, and I'm ready to move forward. And if I am moving forward, it's either going to be probably not going to be here in Houston, it seems like. And if it isn't here in Houston, can we get these underlying conditions taken care of so that the team that I am going to, we're not spending the whole first 5 or 6 games wondering when is Deshaun Watson going to be ready to play football? And are these things, all these accusations, going to be put behind him so he can play football? We know one thing, he can frickin' play football. The guy on a horrible, horrible football team was, I think, should have been up there as one of the maybe 2 or 3 guys listed for the MVP of the league last year, and that's just my personal opinion. And so we all know we can play football. It's just whether or not some of these situations you were mentioning and that we all don't even know about that could possibly be happening get put to rest, where he can play football. He can do it with a mindset that hey, I've made some mistakes, whatever they are, or I haven't made any mistakes. These accusations are false, and move on in a way that teams can now put first and second round picks for the next 2 or 3 years together to Houston for a guy like Deshaun Watson, who could be a game changer for some organizations if he's available and ready.
Well, remains to be seen. I think everybody's waiting and watching. Now, to close out the show, Mark, we're going to talk about our division. For the last 10 years almost, it's been the Eagles and the Cowboys. The Eagles and the Cowboys. The Redskins, the Washington football team, slides in there and they win a division one year, and the Giants slide in. But it's primarily been dominated by the Eagles and the Cowboys for the last 10 years. This was once a storied division. In our day, it was the preeminent division. I mean, you had 4 teams in that division that could just flat out get it done and play that talent all over the place. The last 2 or 3 years, this division has just looked horrible. And to a certain degree, there's not a whole lot of hope in sight. But as you begin to look at the Washington football team and you begin to look at the New York Giants, you realize that, you're having some parity, in this division. Let's just burn through, each team, starting with the Eagles. They got, a second-year quarterback, a first-year quarterback, rather, that's coming back. They're slated to be the starter. You got a new head coach with a really young staff. The offensive coordinator is 37. I think the defensive coordinator is 35, or it might be flipped the other way. Extremely young staff. The team is in rebuild mode, but when you look at what they've been able to do via the draft and how they're setting up their roster, the guys that they're signing, they're creating an exorbitant amount of competition. Where do you see the Eagles at next year? A lot of people don't think that they'll do much. But I always feel like the defense is the part, that comes last. The offense finds its way a lot faster. And if the offensive line can stay healthy, I think the Philadelphia Eagles would be a little better than people think they might be.
I think they'll be. I just feel because of the pride in Philadelphia and especially after winning a Super Bowl, the expectations, for the last 3 or 4 years, there's still a lot of players that were on that Super Bowl team that are with the Philadelphia Eagles that understand what it takes to win a world championship. So I think they'll always be a factor just because of that. And I think because being in Philadelphia comes with it a sense of, I don't want to let my city down. We have we're very proud of who we are, how we go about our business. We have this kind of a lunch bucket atmosphere here. We're going to bring our lunch bucket each and every day. We know if we can work harder than other teams, we're going to be better than other teams. And I think that's one of the things that all these organizations look at. Some have a little bit more skill, a little bit more firepower, but in essence, it's who wants it the most and who's going to work the hardest to get there.
Wow. Okay. So let's talk about the Washington football team. I think that, you guys finally have a field general. Obviously, the defense is the strength of the team with those 4 or 5, first rounders on the defensive line. They're going to be, hell to deal with for the next 8 to 10 years. Ryan Fitzpatrick, has been signed to be, the starter, stopgap, if you will. It's the quarterback position is only one or two positions that Washington didn't address. You got Taylor Henneke that came in and played admirably at the end of the year. But the Washington football team did not draft a running back, and they did not draft a quarterback. They addressed every other position with the exception of field goal kicker and punter. But they took a guy at every single position across the board. And Ron seems like he's just building this thing, and they're coming.
Well, I think Ron's got an attitude where if he has a field general that can kind of control the game and be a game plan guy, a guy that can just make right decisions, not turn the ball over. That he has got a system, especially on defense with with who they
Jack
have.
Del Rio.
Yeah, Jack Del Rio and
Mhm.
and the group that they have there, and I think with the Washington football team, it's so hard not to call them the Redskins, and I know it's your show and you can't, but I'll always refer to them as the Redskins. But
Yeah,
the Washington football team will, I think, just because I think Ron is a guy that he drafts guys because he sees how they're going to fit into his system, much like Joe Gibbs did. I mean, maybe they might not be a superstar name, but they've got a gait about them where they understand what role that they play within the offense, within the defense, and then you have a great special teams unit to complement both of that. And I think that the one thing that Washington has always been, even when we won Lombardi trophies in the 80s and 90s, is to control the line of scrimmage, both defensively and offensively. We know the defensive line, and when you start adding guys that won national championships from Alabama and other players that have been around and played at high level in college, you're developing a culture here, and you're developing a culture of that's the kind of guys that Ron wants on his football team. Have these guys won wherever they're at, whether it be D1 AA or D1 Division One. We want guys that have won, understand what it takes to win, and are going to do everything they possibly can during the offseason and throughout the season to get there.
Segueing into the New York Giants, I guess the biggest question mark will be one Daniel Jones, the quarterback for the New York Giants. They made some strides last year under Joe Judge. They seem like they're moving in a positive direction. They seem like they had a pretty good draft. And, again, like the Washington football team, they're coming.
Yeah, he's an interesting, he's a very smart kid. Played, Duke, and has got some as far as how he's improved. That's what you want to look at, and that's what I look at as a kid that comes in there and struggles like he did his freshman year, his first year, and then his rookie year, his second year, he made some plays and made some significant strides, and that's what you're looking for. And then all of a sudden, you've got a group of guys around you starting to believe in Daniel Jones and what Daniel Jones can do. They've always had a bit of a persona about him on defense, whether it be back in the days of Harry Carson, Lawrence Taylor. They just have a sense of like, hey, this is who we are. This is our DNA, and our defense, even to the contrary of how our offense is, we're going to play at a solid level each and every game, and we're going to bring it each and every game. So I think the Giants are going to be as Daniel Jones goes, that's how far they will go this year.
And lastly, the team we all love to hate, the Dallas Cowgirls. Dak signs the big deal. Zeke's coming off an off year. In my opinion, I think they got the best trio of wide receivers in the division. If Dak is healthy, they're going to be a problem because CeeDee Lamb, is just going to get better. Defense, on the defensive side of the ball, they've been problematic. They bring in Dan Quinn to kind of restructure things. 8 of their 11 draft picks this year were defensive players. You got Mike McCarthy. You got Jerry Jones, who always seems to figure out a way to stir the pot and put undue pressure on this football team. Your thoughts about Dallas and whether the combination of Mike McCarthy and Dan Quinn can turn this thing around for them?
Well, I do believe that it all depends on how Zeke plays. Zeke played, and I wouldn't say Zeke. I mean, there just wasn't much there for Zeke. And
right.
In fact, it was like when he was a few games I watched, when he's on the sidelines, they had some more success because they did some things differently. I think what they need to do is get Zeke into the game early, because obviously with the talent that they have at the wide receiver position, and you're going to start bringing guys on the line of scrimmage, you're putting your best athletes one-on-one against other teams, maybe their 2 best corners, but you got a third guy now that's trying to cover a guy man-on-man, and that's going to be difficult. And then Dak Prescott, I don't care what anyone says, this kid can flat out frickin' play. He's again, one of those guys that are just kind of quiet, goes about his business, but he can play football, throws it well, he leads them well, and he's going to be a force if his health is
Right.
back to where it was 2 years ago. I think this kid is the sky's the limit for this guy. The ceiling's very high. You don't want to say that about the Cowboys, or the Cowgirls, but they'll be there. And again, it'll matter on their defense. They were very porous last year and have been for a couple of years. And I think that culture, if they're going to get back to winning Super Bowls, that culture needs to change. Their defense is to me, was a little soft, and I think defenses in general have been soft just because the rule changes. But they need to be able to be a little bit more stout up front and bring a little bit more pressure because I don't think they got the guys in the secondary that can last a long time, especially 1001, 1002, 1003 happens. They're going to be in trouble.
Well, I tell you, the problem is, Dan Quinn, that's not his MO, pressure. He's a cover three show type of guy, has been that way ever since, he was with Seattle. I tell you, the guy that they picked with their first pick, I think he's a game changer. Micah Parsons, man, when I watch this kid play, he reminds me of a guy like Luke Kuechly, a guy like Ray Lewis, a guy like Bobby Wagner. What he does is he's going to change the entire culture of that defense. Now, can Dan Quinn adjust the way that he calls defense to allow his aggressiveness to kind of emanate and filter out to the rest of the team? Because, to your point, they were really bad defensively last year.
Yeah, I think they'll use him, much like, Lawrence Taylor and yourself sometimes in the 56 where, they can bring pressure from the edges. He can come on the edge. I think Van Der Esch has showed that he's a pretty good run support, run plug-in, middle linebacker. But you need some athletic guys on the edges that can bring it around the corner. And he showed that not only can he, do it and has done it, but I think will be a lethal force for Dan in giving them another option about bringing some pressure because that's one of their downfalls is they kind of sit back and play, I wouldn't say prevent. Everyone says prevent. The only thing prevent does prevents you from winning, So.
No doubt. Well, we said all of that about the NFC East, and I have to ask the question unbiasedly, who walks away with the division this year, in your opinion?
Oh, I think I honestly think it's probably going to be Washington is going to be over 500 this year. I have a feeling, and I think Dallas is it's going to be a very competitive division. I think 9-7 will have an opportunity, or 10-6 to win the whole thing. That's just how competitive I see it. I know that Washington's schedule is I think their last 5 games are all against NFC East opponents. So if they're in the hunt, they could easily be out of the hunt, or they could actually win it all during the last month in December. So just looking at their schedule, their schedule either favors them or is a curse for them, depending on how you look at it,
Well, we only play 16, but they're either going to be 10-7.
Well, that's right. Yeah, 17. You're right about that. Thank you.
Yeah. How about that?
Yeah, that's going to be hard. That's going to be difficult.
Well, Mark, I'm going to let you run, man. Hey, listen, I appreciate your time. I tell my guests every single week, our most valuable commodity is our time, man. I thank you for the last hour and 8 minutes. You taking time out of your busy day and your golfing game to come and talk some sports with me, talk some football with me. And, man, hey, it went fast. We could sit up here and talk football till the cows come home. But
absolutely. It does go by fast, and I can't wait to see you out here in about a little over 2 months now.
There you go. There you go, man. And, hey, let's get together and tee it, whenever we're in the same city, man, all right?
Always good seeing you, Seth. Thanks,
Well,
buddy.
Thank you, man. Hey, well, listen, guys, that's the show for today. Like I always say, be good to each other, take care of each other, but most importantly, love each other. I'll see you guys right back here next week on the Seth Joyner Show. Peace.